Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Lucid, and I am joined by the wise and sage Sai.
Hi, this is the wise and sage Sai, and I'm joining the ever entrepreneurial Lucid for the tournament cast.
And we've got some pretty cool turns coming up. On one hand, some things are winding down. As you can see, Jomen has permanently been defeated. But we also have things ramping up. We've got the war with Pythium between Tianchi and Arethia, or Tianchi and Arethia against Pythium about to start happening. And also the Gath Marinese war is kind of on the downswing now because they had that big battle where Marin basically lost their whole mage core. Agartha is still in a very much of a rebel state. And we have the Poke Fest 2023 between Pangia and Vhim, or so it's been so far.
Right. And then along those lines, we've also seen folks moving up to attack Vhim, namely Shabalba and Utgard, both of which could potentially swing the war against the goblins.
Yeah. And man, eliminating Vhim from a game you're in, it's like, ooh, feels good. So we'll see if these guys are up to it. Yeah, very hard. We'll start with a message here from Arco. That feeling when you take Misfortune 2 scales, but still had plans to do Transformation Thugs, and then you spawn next to the Throne of Fortune, so you can actually do Luck 3 transformations, and then your first one you get is the best chassis in the game. Orgasm. Mindful Sun.
Yes. We didn't call this one out, but he actually got the Giant Sorcerer.
Right. Yeah. And it's kind of funny because Sai and I were talking about bug level exploits before this started, but there's really weird mechanics on the grab and swallow thing where if you grab and swallow a Phoenix Pirate dude, you can kind of break the game. It's really funny.
Yeah. Hopefully we're not going to see any actual crash turns from this particular fellow.
I told him about it. When he sent me a screenshot, he's like, I got the Giant Sorcerer. I was like, nice, man, that can break the game. Don't do fly attack rear. Because if you ever catch a Phoenix Pirate Thug with it, you will actually crash the game.
That's kind of an unfortunate interaction because you really do want to use this guy as a thug.
Right.
In part because of how good Grab and Swallow is. And you can't really control if your opponent sends Phoenix Pyre into it.
Right. But yeah, the only nice thing about it is you don't have to roll back because the turn will actually fail to process. You will actually crash the game server. So next up, we have a message from Gath. Hey there. Sorry for not commenting on that epic battle. I have some health issues which prevent me from typing much. I will resume messaging you when and if it gets better. For now, just trying to outsmart Marin, as usual, and planning a major attack next turn. Arco will have 3 caps next turn, while I have 1. Not a good sign at all, but I don't think I have many good options now other than doing my best to finish off Marin with as little losses as possible. P.S. Teammates help quite a lot with decision-making now, and possibly scripting later. I keep using I instead of we, though, because I got used to it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
We'd kind of commented how Arco is in like a theoretically a very strong but very precarious position last video when we, did our deep dive in the graphs.
Yep.
And so I guess just to kind of reiterate that, like whether or not Arco is going to be in a top position is going to depend very much on what is going to happen next. So I think our assumption had been that he's going to move immediately into a war with Shabalba. And if he doesn't take the time to like actually catch up on research, then he's going to be basically continuously attacking while he's actually kind of behind where he could be as what's generally run as this very like mage and research focused nation.
Yeah.
So if he does take the time to catch up, he certainly can because Arco's mages are great at researching. But he needs to actually do that in order to not fall behind and basically be stuck in a position where he's continuously fighting while his opponents who are like actually taking the time to tech up just get too far ahead in research or other resources, in Shabalba's case with the blood hunting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, Arco definitely, if he gets to take all of the land and forts he has now and have the mages in it read books for 10 or 15 turns, he's gonna catch up in terms of, of military power with a bunch of the other nations. Right now, it doesn't even matter how many troops he has. It's just the tech of some of these other nations are going to make them kind of unfightable for him.
Yeah, I don't think it's even 10 or 15 turns. I think it's more like 3 or 4 because I mean mystics just really are that good. But really what he needs is basically some sort of answer to bone grinding and wailing winds. So generally for Arco, for my money, you basically need to have either Fog Warriors or Will of the Fates, or preferably both. You need to have golems in order to like basically have some sort of magic leadership so that you can at least have like elemental armies or something along those lines in order to not like instantly fail a morale check and lose a battle. And then, but like these are all very achievable for Arco, I think.
I mean, yeah, I mean, bone grinding is hard to counter, right? Like,
It definitely is, yeah.
especially for Arco, like, oh, I'll do Fog Warriors. I mean, you can do it as part of a communion. You're going to get hit twice before you get Fog Warriors up. There's a very high chance that gets interrupted, either by killing communion slaves or, the commander casting it getting interrupted. So
you can do it with a fairy queen with a crystal shield,
right? But again,
without needing an air.
But again, that is not 3 turns away,
yeah.
right? That's
that's Conjuration 8.
Yeah. So. Next up, we have a message from Vhim. Hey, so Al is on hiatus, and I'm back and getting into the groove. We previously declared war on Pan in an attempt to give Marignon a more fair chance with Gath. That generally worked, but it didn't end up helping Marignon in the end. Some of that decision was influenced by my gut feeling that I would likely be the next target from Pan regardless. His god is very destructive versus Vhim, and it woke up early. Cue this turn. Zabalba has also ended their nap. Utgard has a large force prepped, but has not responded to any Diplo. He hasn't ended nap, but I'm operating under the assumption he will attack. The crux of my strategy is going to be getting Pan to take a fight, so I'm going to take a risky move this turn. Time to play some mind games. I'm deliberately showing research to be lower than it is, cracking his throne, and attempting to gym bait him into a fight he thinks he can win comfortably. That's going to require gym expenditure to sell it, which is unfortunate because that's how it goes. There's some risks for sure, because he could move and patrol this turn and fight where I'm poorly scripted. And I'll need to commit basically everything. If he doesn't believe it's an all-in, he won't necessarily take the fight because he'll want to see what's stealthed. Wish me luck. So
yeah, that's very risky. Intentionally doing this like a bad script is very scary.
Yeah, I don't think it's so much a bad script, but he's keeping his highest research things that he has hidden. And he may still feel confident he can take a fight without that stuff. But like you said, it's risky.
Yeah, it's at the very least a pretty big ask, I would say.
The other thing kind of going on here is because these other nations are declaring war, while at the beginning, if you remember when this war started, he was saying, well, we'll just poke and prod and all that, and that's kind of what's been happening. But poking and prodding is not a good strategy, especially when the defenses, like we've seen for Pangia, are top-notch, when other people are also about to attack you. Because he now needs to get a decisive win against Pangia before the rest of the coalition attacks him.
Yeah, he needs to actually get things moving in order to resolve one or more of the wars that he's in.
Right. So with that, let's start with Vhim. And I think they may have a big fight, because I think I peeked at one of these turns. I'm not sure if it's this one. Okay, yeah, this is it.
Oh, yeah, this is the big fight. Okay, so this is Vhim with the script that they trained wrong as a joke.
Right. Now, there's some interesting things about this formation. We have a tremendous... Okay, well, let's start with the Vhim side. They obviously have the Rim Vetti in front. They've got a bunch of Gaija here in the middle, with a bunch of Jotun Gaija here in the middle as well. And a lot of Berserkers on the flanks, with the Stone Hurlers basically a siege chaff in the back to soak up like air elementals that may land and otherwise just be present.
I think that the hurlers are literally just there for the siege strength because you wanted to instantly pop this fort. I don't think that they're necessarily like intended to catch elementals, even if they might also like incidentally serve that role.
Right. Yeah, I think they're mostly in the back just to avoid dying so that they pop the fort. But yeah, I do think it's intentional because he also put these guys in the back. I do think the big guys are, like these guys especially, are in the back to catch air elementals. It's my guess. He's got, this is one of probably the best Vhim hero they get because it gives them air death. And it looks like it's scripted for Wailing Winds or something.
But there's something with Big Death, and she's also twice born. So even if he does lose her, it's not like
right
total loss.
And then we're not gonna explore all the mages to see the script. Can this one jump into communion? No.
Yeah, that's just earth power and then some sort of earth 3 spell, so presumably legions
Strength of
or Strength
Giants. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then on
Which
Pan's
is really
side,
big on Vhim.
yeah, it's really good. On Pangia's side, we've got, I think this is about like 400 crossbows in a box and then a line in the back. And then we've got a line of Minotaur and then a line of these horses, the cataphracts.
Yeah, so the Minotaur are kind of interesting in that I think that he's bringing these guys specifically thinking that they're going to go squish the size 1 dudes, but like really all they're going to be doing is, like the only thing useful they're going to be doing is pushing them out of formation. I think that like in terms of the actual damage output, size 3 Champlars just aren't like anything impressive.
Yeah, I mean, they would be good against Vhim if you have like a critical mass. The problem is if you kind of look up, they're probably going to run into the Rim Vaetti, who they'll probably instantly fatigue out like after 1 turn of trample.
They're very high encumbrance.
But they would potentially be better against the Berserkers if you had a critical mass, but this is not a critical mass. Yeah, it's a big ask from them. The real bulk of the front line for Pangia, like the actual kind of power stack, is this Dryad force, because I mean it's a lot of them. Like they're 4 a tile, and they're it looks like he's planning on maybe holding up on the bottom flank and maybe winning on the top flank, because he's also got these guys behind him too.
Well, you say that, but his actual damage is on the bottom flank. Like the Dryads are not, killing machines. They're just pretty tanky.
Yeah, I mean, Strength of Giants, we'll see what buffs he casts. They are going to be sort of killy. I mean, they'll probably be more killy than a tile of this with Strength of Giants on them. Because you'll have literally
the same attack density at lower strength, though, and no lance charge.
Well, but yeah, I mean, but it's going to be not a hoof attack. It's going to be 2 of the spear attacks.
Yeah, but the spear attack's 1 more damage than the hoof. It's piercing, which, situationally better.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
Yeah, the only real advantage that those guys have, offensively speaking at least, is the magic weapons.
Yeah, that too. And then the Centaur Mage Core is here in the middle, and we'll see what he does with that. So let's zoom out. Let's watch. First crossbow volley. And that was a pretty good smattering. He probably got some mages.
Yeah, you can check that on the leadership thing. And then the other thing that I like is that he's having the centaurs immediately charge. I think that's potentially good for the same reason that you keep talking about, like the forward crossbow deployment. In that, like, if you can get in fast enough, then you can fight before the buffs are all finished.
Right.
Or, in the centaur's case, at least like interrupt them.
The only thing that's a little unfortunate about it, I mean, everybody's set to attack. Nobody's holding attack. The only thing that's a little unfortunate about it is they're not all arriving at the same time. So these centaurs are going to get here probably a whole turn before the Minotaur and a whole turn before the Dryads at least. It looks like he's got some lifelong protections too. I'm not sure who they're on. Yeah, okay, here's one.
They're on the Dim Vaetti.
No, that was on a Gaija. Let's see where
Okay. Yeah, but he has a bunch of Dim Vaetti in this fight.
Okay.
And I assume that they're mostly LLP holders. Oh, he's actually just using them for the Dusk Daggers. Okay.
He's got one with it, but it looks like about 4 or 5 total, so he probably has these on other mages.
Yeah, and LLP is really, really good with Vhim's magic because they can actually do like a bunch of different like fatigue and unit spam stuff.
Right.
Because in addition to the LLPs, they also have, Horde of Skeletons and Swarm and Howl. And of course, the actual fatigue stuff, the Grip of Winter, Rigor Mortis.
Right.
So they have great synergy with that item. More so than like Marin, which has a discount on the item itself, but really needs to spam it in order to have the same value.
Right. That's a great point. Yeah, Marin doesn't really have a lot of chaff generation abilities aside from that.
Yeah, I mean, they could do like Howl with their god, and I mean, they did. But like it's basically like that and Heat from Hell.
Darkness being cast by Queen of the Underworld. So I thought she was going to do Wailing Winds. But she cast Darkness.
I think part of that might be a matter of what tech he wants to show off.
Yeah.
So he's willing to show off the alteration, but he's trying to keep the Evo hidden.
Right. And he's got Spirit Sight on these Rim Vaetti as well. So interesting.
They're going to have no problem with the Darkness.
Yeah, they're going to tear things up. The Berserkers aren't going to have quite as good of a time, but That's
But
fine.
the what you call them, the imps also have dark vision because they're demons.
That's true. Oh, and then big battlefield magic. We have Pangia has cast Fog Warriors and Arrow Shield. So
I think both sides actually have Arrow Fend up.
right. Yeah. Who cast that on Vhim's side?
The one of the Silver Adepts.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, he lost one of them.
Yeah, I think he died in the initial crossbow volley.
Okay. Well, if he got Arrowfend up, his job is done.
I think it was the other one that did Arrowfend, the one with the gems.
Now, Fog Warriors is going to be really good against Vhim because all the chaff generation that Vhim has, Horde of Skeletons, Imps, that's all normal damage. So it's going to prevent anybody from ever taking more than 1 damage against those guys. The only thing it's not going to work against is stuff like Drain Life from the mages and the Rim Vaetti, who have magic weapons, importantly. So
it's also not going to have any effect on the fatigue stuff. So the Grip of Winter, which I think is that blue spell there.
Right.
And the actual cold aura from the Rim Vaetti.
Right. Now, Vhim has done... So we have Howl being cast by the Centaur Sage. So Howl on Pangia's side, Relief, and, like you were saying, Grip of Winter on Vhim's side.
Yeah, Vhim probably should have Howl up as well, just because it's kind of like, if you are doing this fatigue stuff, it's yet another source of chaff. The one downside is that the wolves can occasionally form a bubble wrap where they prevent the thing against or that they're trying to bite from being killed. Whereas the imps at least have a higher attack density. So while they're not immune to Grip of Winter, they're at least able to dish out more damage before they collapse to the fatigue effect.
Oh, he do mass flight? He did mass flight on Pangia. I didn't realize that. Wow. So it's like, what are these Satyr doing popping up all over the place? Pangia has also cast mass flight.
That actually makes the initial charge a little less good to me, because it means that stuff has kind of been straggling in, as you pointed out, when it could be kind of all arriving as a blob regardless. And that also means that he didn't get to cast Strength of Giants on the stuff that charged ahead.
Yeah. Well, you can control what... I'm not sure what turn it went off on, but the problem we're seeing... Let's take a look at this fight. It's looking like most of the Pangia stuff is dying. A lot of these things, and this is kind of the problem with mass flight, is it's very easy to get surrounded and isolated. It makes sense in the context that Pangia wants a fast fight. With all this chaff generation by Vhim, they don't really want a long fight. They want a fast fight. So right. Mass flight's good for that, but this is like a cheddar cheese trap. Where there's a bunch of holes that Pangia units jump in and die in. What were you going to say?
I was going to say that the Vhim in general likes prolonged fights, both from the chaff generation that we had kind of just been talking about, but also from the fatigue effects. Because not only are their guys lower encumbrance in general, but they've also got those auras which synergize great with that Grip of Winter.
Right. Yeah, and we don't have... There's no cold resistance on Pan, so he hasn't... They haven't cast that. And that's a tough one. Yeah.
They can cast the smaller area of effect version with their water random Centaur Sages.
Right. And they don't have the 8s yet required to do army-wide ones.
Yeah, and that's another thing that using Hold and Attack would have helped them with, because then they'd be able to put the cold resistance and Strength of Giants on that big blob of Dry Hoplites. And Legions of Steel, for that matter. Can you check out one of those Hoplites squares to see what buffs are on them?
Yeah, they don't have Legions of Steel.
Okay, they did get something, though, because I see that it's Berserk. So I think that might be from, what's the battlefield-wide spell?
Oh, Growing Fury? Did that go up?
No, it's not Growing Fury. So it must be from, one of them was Berserk.
Or something? Or what would it be? Well, it's not on most of them.
Yeah. So maybe it was the AoE 1 version, Touch of Madness.
Yeah, it could have been that.
But yeah, most of them don't have Strength of Giants.
Yeah.
Or Legions of Steel. So those are relatively low-hanging fruit that can actually still make a pretty big difference.
Yeah, the other thing, too, is there's some punishment of the Vhim, super high density here. Landing Gifts of Heaven. We've seen a few Gifts of Heaven land here, and that's, a really big deal every time that hits.
Yeah, even Thunderstrike.
But
even with the shock resistance,
right.
the square that actually gets hit gets deleted.
Right. We've seen a few Thunderstrikes too, but we haven't seen a lot of Gifts of Heaven, and we haven't seen a lot of Thunderstrikes. The other thing that you kind of would be really good from Pangia here would be like big mauls from the Earth plays. And with these Gaijas here and then all the density, it would really want to target these tiles. So and I don't think Vhim, well, they have here, you can see they've got protection, which does help against some of the maws.
Yeah, but the other advantage to Moz is that because he's using Mass Flight, there's no friendly fire.
That's true.
Moz is kind of hard to cast, though, because you generally want it to be on advancing cast, and while they
Right.
will often cast it off string, they'll also often want to default to Gifts from Heaven instead.
Yeah, I was thinking the best unit for him to do with Maws, because it's also really high fatigue, is like put it on Pans and have him do it out of a communion.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah,
expensive.
if you put gems on the Earth Random Sages and have them advance and cast, they will sometimes cast it, but you know they'll also cast gifts and summon Earth Elementals and other things
Yeah.
you don't necessarily want them to do.
So at this point in the battle, the front line from Pangia has completely disintegrated. The crossbows, while they're pretty tough to kill with good protection and fog warriors, are trying to pick at these Rimvetti, but really struggling.
And imps, for that matter.
Right. And the fatigue isn't really getting them, but there is a slow kind of mass of zombies waddling towards them across the battlefield. And when they get here, the fate is all but sealed.
Yeah, well, the crossbows might not be succumbing to fatigue. The mages most likely are. Because they've been casting, and you can kind of see that they've switched from, like, you know, dropping stuff every turn, such that even the Communion Masters
Oh,
start
they're not.
casting that off.
Surprisingly, I would have thought the same.
Well, those
but
are the
they're not.
slaves.
No, there are some Communion Masters who aren't either. Like, let me see. I'll show you one when I get one. Maybe, are the Masters running? Oh, wait, here's one. Okay. Wait. Ah,
There he is.
Yeah,
57. Okay, so he's not so bad.
yeah.
Well, that's one of the air guys, so he's doing Thunderstrikes instead of Gifts. Although I guess Thunderstrike's pretty high fatigue, too. Yeah. Yeah, okay. I guess the mages are... Wait, aren't they casting that? Are they just getting interrupted?
Oh, wait, they've slept.
Oh.
Wait, were there big brain sleep clouds being cast? What's going on?
I mean, there must be.
Where the mages are all back here. Can they? Is it? It's not that far range, is it?
Maybe it's friendly fire?
Okay, we're gonna have to go back and see what happened to why these sleep clouds are on the mage core. No, these are not friendly fire. Those are intentionally cast. Sleep cloud.
Yeah, okay. Oh, he has the Farcaster Bless. Of course.
Oh man,
We completely forgot about that.
that might
So,
have been the
yeah.
thing that swung this battle even like harder than anything else. Like making the mage core fall asleep with sleep cloud is huge.
Yeah, and you would think that these guys would be pretty resistant to it, but I guess he didn't cast anti-magic. Oh, no, he did. Okay.
He did. Yep.
Yeah, I guess they just failed their checks even with 19 MR.
So this is interesting. This looks like a fatigue play, but fatigue was hardly a factor in this whole thing. It's just they've been overwhelmed with chaff generation. And the things which maybe were going to clear stuff out the fastest, like the mages, they're all asleep.
But they weren't... Were they casting Sleep Cloud on round 1?
We're going to go back and watch. I'm not sure.
Okay. Because, I mean, this is looking like off-script Sleep Cloud.
Yeah, it is. It is.
It's definitely still high impact.
I mean,
If anything...
Yeah. I mean, whether they were casting it, I think it's a good question whether they were casting it round 1, but it's also a good question, were they casting it like round 5 and 6 or 7? You know, like, when did they turn the mages off?
Yeah, and it's pretty interesting that this is the constrained Vhim.
Right.
This is Vhim winning without all their newest tricks.
Right. He hasn't put his muscle shirt on yet. Okay, so let's look again and let's see when the sleep clouds start happening. Let's see what the Pangia Mage Core is just doing as we watch to see when the sleep clouds land. Communion.
Oh, there it is. There's sleep
There
cloud.
it
Okay,
is.
so he actually scripted it.
What's interesting is it really likes targeting these mages. I guess they're 46 HP a tile. And it's doing it over.
No, I think that it is doing it kind of everywhere.
A little bit, yeah. But it's not a ton of these guys are sleeping.
Yeah, I mean, with 19 MR, I wouldn't expect them to be sleeping constantly, but it is doing enough in that it's like interrupting spellcasting.
Yeah.
Because every turn that one of these guys isn't casting is a big deal. That's a gift that's not dropping, or a thunderstrike that's not dropping.
I think there's not a lot of communion masters. There's one here, 1, 2, 3.
You can also just click on one of the slaves and check out at least how many slaves there are in the communion.
Yeah, I'll do that in a second. I think it's only like 5 masters. So while it looks like a ton of centaur sages, I think there's a tremendous number of. I'm sorry, I have to click on one of the masters.
Yeah.
It's
20 slaves. Okay.
This is too many. This is a very, very conservative communion. I mean,
Yeah, it's bottom heavy.
it's very bottom heavy. And so they never fatigue out, even in the very long battle. Great. But he's basically like, this whole stack is basically like 5 mages.
I think you brought like 30 mages, so it would be like 10 and 20.
I don't think there's that many.
You can check the report.
Oh, the masters are up here. Okay. So some of these guys are on advancing cast. Okay.
Yeah, I remember there being 30 something in the fort.
Falling Frost. Well, and then once the line starts collapsing, then a lot of his masters are dead, because it looks like he's about 5 masters on advancing cast and about 5 on cast. So the advancing cast die once the rather slim Pangia front line falls apart. And now it's I mean,
and I think Massplate didn't help with that, because with Massplate everyone kind of got scattered. So with his guys diving in behind the Vaetti, that's that many fewer guys between the advancing cast mages and the actual Vhim army.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few things that were really clutch from Vhim. Turn 1 Aerofend was really key for this whole battle to play out. If he didn't have Aerofend, it would have been a lot different.
Yeah.
The imps probably helped a lot from the lifelong, just in keeping from having like critical mass of fire hitting the Vhim front line.
I think they also just did a bunch of damage.
Yeah. Let's also watch what happened to the front line here real quick. So Fog Warriors hits just as these guys are landing. How long does it take these guys to fatigue out? 53 fatigue, 45.
They're at 53 fatigue basically as soon as they make contact.
80 fatigue. Yeah, Fog Warriors basically insta-popped.
Yeah, those guys are one of the very small handful of troops for which Berserk isn't even that much of an advantage, just because their encumbrance is so bad, and Berserk just makes that worse.
Yeah. Yeah, and this guy's fatigued out now. So yeah, it wasn't very long that they had while they were awake, and they were getting killed pretty quick too.
Yeah, but they were also in the cold floras, so I think that was also a big deal. But let's check out the Butcher's Bill.
Yeah, so in total, Vhim lost what looks like about 14 mages, maybe a little less.
11 mages, or no, 12, 13. 13 is correct, yes.
Okay.
If you count the Dim Vaetti.
Right. And then Pangia lost 27 Centaur Sages. That hurts.
Okay, so it was only 30. Yeah, so 5 and 5, yeah. Yeah, that's way too bottom loaded.
Yeah, I mean, it is true once you get to high, like, you can have 20 slaves, but they can only support so many masters. Like, you can't support 20 masters with 20 sages, because you're going to cause at a minimum 20 fatigue each turn for, 1 fatigue per each master. So for a very long battle. But I think if once you start going too much above 10 masters, you kind of have to count on the slaves dying. But that's probably preferable to only having 10 masters. Because when you really look at it, Vhim has way more active mages than Pangia, when you consider that this line's really just 10.
Yeah, my go-to with Pan is to get +3, so you do like 8 slaves, but you typically do more like, 10 or 12 in order to make sure that you have like enough excess slaves so that you can actually get all of your spells off. And then you get, a couple rounds of high-level magic including all of your big battlefield spells like your Fog Warriors and all that good stuff. And then your slaves die. And then that's okay. You just live with it.
Right. So in terms of troops, though, Pangia lost about 200 of the Satyr snipers, most all the Dryad hoplites, and then, yeah, I mean, it's 370 dead troops for Pangia.
I will say, though, that this Pangean army is absolutely not a full commitment. Like, it's their biggest army, sure. It's the biggest one that we've seen so far. But there are no pans here. There were very few items. I don't think there were even any items on the sages. I think it was just the gems. And there weren't even that many excess gems. So that was not like an all-in.
Yeah, I don't remember. I think there were some on some of these guys, but...
No, I think he's got just enough gems for the fight.
Okay.
And, you can do that when you're fighting defensively. Like, he's on his fort and he's moving into it.
Right.
So he can't really be magic phased because it's a move patrol and not just a patrol.
Right.
So, knowing that you can't be gem burned, that kind of makes that, minimal gem commitment okay. But, I mean, this is this is not an all-in from
Right.
Pangia by any stretch. He
That's
can
fair.
make stronger armies than this.
Yeah. That's fair.
It still hurts, don't get me wrong. And, losing this battle is a big deal. But it's not the biggest deal. And Pangia is by no means out of this war, much less the game.
Yeah. I don't think Pangia is going to be able to win a fight, though, now. Doing the same thing they've been doing. Like, the same strategy was... the strategy they had in the past was, we're going to, like, buff up a front line, and we're going to have a big archer mass, and we'll maybe pepper you with some spells from our sages. I think that strategy's out now. So it doesn't look like he's even recruiting more of these snipers, but they're done. I think we're going to enter a new era of Pangia tech. And
This is the post-Arrowfend era.
right. And the question's going to be, what is that going to be, and how soon will it be? How soon is he going to be able to field that army?
So I will say this about Pangia. First of all, they still have a ton of mages, right? Like,
Right.
losing 27 sucks. That's 27 fort turns and a bunch of gold. It's by no means a write-off. But, I mean, you look at their forts, you can see that they can make another army just as big if they want to.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. Secondly, they didn't spend that many gems. We know that their gem income isn't the best, right? Like, TNG's still, like,
Yeah.
well ahead of them. But their gem income's not that bad. They're kind of up there. I think they're... Oh, okay. So I guess they're not really a front runner in the gem game.
Yeah.
But they still absolutely could have spent more than that. They could have
Right.
dumped a bunch of air elementals, which they didn't in that fight.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, this isn't the end of it. Like, I would be surprised if Pangia just, like, auto loses this territory, all of this, because of this fight. Like, he hasn't given up huge swaths of land as a kind of foregone conclusion from losing this army.
Right. And I think that, so in terms of like what they can do next, this is, I guess, more just speculation. But I think elementals is one thing. We didn't see them that fight, but they're hugely effective against Vhim. And air elementals in particular are great at doing very specifically making fights quick, right?
Yep.
Because they do lots of damage. And if they don't all get fatigued out by the cold auras against the 6 per square Vaetti in particular, they can just squish terribly. So you bring, like, whatever leftover crossbow stuff you have, use those as forward deploy guys. Because those did do damage, right? Like that first round of crossbow fire,
Yeah.
I think is what actually killed that adept.
Yep.
So that's great. And then...
I think he only has 2 air income, though. Oh, he might have 1 from Micklin. No, I think it's just 2 air income.
Okay, so that might be a limiting factor. He might need to buy air gems from someone.
Yeah.
If he's doing mass flight, you can also do mass flight with other elemental types. So you can do earth, and then actually ice elementals are going to be pretty good because those guys are tramplers and they have cold resistance. So they're not going to mind the Rimvetti auras.
And, mass flight earthquake is a great thing to do against Skelly spam nations. It's one of the tippy-toppiest anti-Skelly spam things to do.
Yeah, because it clears out the skeletons in bulk,
Right.
while also hurting the mages.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you wasted the first 5 turns of your combat. You casted mages you casted skeletons, and I literally killed them all on turn 5. So even the mages that don't get hurt, they still wasted a ton of fatigue. So
Yeah, so Pangia definitely has tools, is I guess what we can like summarize that as. They just have to actually go use that instead of, as you pointed out, what they had been doing with the relatively gem cheap buff stuff.
ooh, spicy. Lantern Shield and Firebrand and this other stuff here. So with the Sage doing buffs.
I suspect based on the pass required for the Lantern Shield that was actually an event item.
Yeah, that's a good guess.
Because like, there's nothing wrong with the Lantern Shield. I actually think it's actually pretty great.
Yeah.
It's also one of those items that's really fun to bring with an army, just because those corpse candles are great disruption.
Mhm.
But I don't think that Pan goes out of their way to build that, especially given that they don't have a ton of native death access.
Yeah, this guy is super combatant here in terms, like, he's not going to give a shit about normal troops.
Yeah. He's a very heavy thug.
Yeah. Low end super combatant, very high end thug.
Yeah.
These spawn with you, so unlike when you normally do corpse candle where they spawn on the battlefield edge, I wasn't sure about that, but yeah.
Yeah, they're retinue.
They're retinue.
Which is also cool for peace purposes, but they have such low HP that it doesn't really matter. Yeah. And then that's another Pan thug, I believe.
He took
we saw
underwater. Both. Yeah. We still don't know what the story is on the lumber construct. We're gonna have to hope somebody put in the comments what happened.
Yeah, we could ask Owl, I suppose.
Yeah. No sign of it. But yeah, Pan, I think aside from losing this battle, though, they're not really down much territory.
Yeah, I don't think they're really down much at all since the start of the war, because they were also regained a bunch of ground versus Marignon. Although it looks like Marignon did take a bunch of that back, or at least 2 of those provinces back.
Which is a great segue into the Marignon theater.
Yeah, so Pangia's other opponent.
Right. 7 Godic Adepts. I wonder what he's doing here. Do we see a bunch of blood slaves? No?
Fire elemental?
No?
Oh, that's very strange.
These guys are not very good. Just walking around without gems.
They need something.
Yeah.
Maybe he's just bringing that many because he needs the leadership. Does he not have a mundane commander with that army?
20 leadership. No, he would only need to bring like 2.
Okay. Yeah, that's weird.
Huh.
Were they supposed to have... No, he has a captain. He doesn't even need it for that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
And those guys don't sail either.
Yeah, maybe he's just trying to slow move them down this way. That could be another mission.
Yeah, so the crossbows are just the escort to get them from the fort to the capital.
Yeah.
But if that's the case, then why is he leaving the devils there?
Well, they have a Mound King, so potentially if he gets these both open, it's possible the Devils and Mound King can actually 3-province move. I'm not sure if they have that.
I'm pretty sure the Adepts can 2-province move, so if that's what he's going for, like if he's just, escorting them to the capital, they should be able to make it to the capital this turn.
Yeah. I don't know. Like Marignon, technically won the last big fight, though, right? Like we haven't seen them lose a fight, I don't think. But they lost their mage core. I don't know if it's time to huddle in the capital yet. I feel like it might be a little early for that. But it makes sense to consolidate and then to attack out.
Yeah, but in order for him to consolidate, he needs to get the mages and the troops in the same place.
Yeah.
And presumably he still wants to fight Gath, which means he needs to get the mages from that fort to where his troops can be gathered, namely his capital.
Yeah, that's fair. But yeah, it looks like these guys probably left this fort. It's my guess, is that these guys are also making a trip from this fort, which got put under siege this turn, to the capital. And then... yeah.
Do you remember what mages were left after the big battle?
I have no idea. But it was a lot. I think all the mages died.
Yeah, so I remember for sure that all the nature mages died, because that had kind of been what I was thinking Gath's anti-army measure would be. But yeah.
And sadly, a lot of the stuff left Marignon had is troops. And here we can see some of these troops running into a fair bit of PD plus a Foul Vapors trap. And
yeah, so Gath had mentioned it before. Kind of cool that, we get to see that in action there with the Jade Sorceress.
Yeah. So Marignon technically wins, but this is a pretty Pyrrhic victory with him losing another 560 gold of troops that he really doesn't want to lose. And then Cohen Gadal hitting this province. Gath swearing to us he's done using Cohen and Godals, and then every turn we see another super combatant deployed.
Well, I think he's done making more of them. But once you've already got the gear, you've already, spent the gems, you may as well keep using them as you can. Especially now that Marignon has lost so many mages, it's going to be that much harder for Marignon to actually counter them.
This is a new kit. I haven't seen this one before. Was this a magic phase?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why you put the hat on those guys. Those are actually the most valuable Godols, in my opinion, because that magic phase makes such a big difference.
Yeah.
And honestly, even just big Astral is important. Like, you need those guys. Those are your Will of the Fates casters.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and then Agartha, they are riding out against Pythium here. And I think everybody left has snake rings. Yeah, everybody who wasn't a snake ring holder has now died.
So now Pythium's mage core is restricted by snake ring access.
Right. He's like on the corner of the street being like, hey man, you got any snake rings?
Yeah, I wonder if he's been buying or who's been selling them to him. Yeah. I would guess like TNG or Arithia, given that they're the ones that are fighting Pythium. But it could be anyone. I mean, Pangia certainly can make them on the cheap, given that they have a bunch of unwon sages.
Yeah. I mean, these fire elementals are eating their weight in umbrals.
Yeah.
Did they get buffs on them? No.
We had actually talked about fire elementals as being a potential counter. Because they're lifeless, they take less damage from the life drain attack.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay, that's right. I'd forgotten already. Because I was like, they are not getting killed very quickly, and that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, I mean, they do still take damage, and because they have 0 protection, like, that damage definitely does add up. But it takes them a lot longer to die than you might expect.
So, on one hand, this pile of umbrals is getting whittled down pretty significantly. On the other hand, he's getting to the point where he's having the number of umbrals he can buff. So, like, once he gets, like, 8 umbrals, that's, like, the amount that this number of mages can buff with Iron Warriors and stuff. So, that's kind of interesting side note, I think.
And he is also whittling down what Pythium has in that theater. Obviously, Pythium can reinforce, given that they're the one that has, more than one unsieged fort at the moment. But it still takes a while to get there.
Yeah, and this is a free-for-all game. This is not a 1v1 duel. So Pythium slowly winning is not a victory, right? Pythium needs to quickly end this war because he's got other people that are about to attack. Agartha eventually succumbing is not a win. But Agartha is also at the point where you can't really back out. It's not a viable nation. Oh my goodness.
Oh, well, now we know where his god went.
So the guy, we were speculating on this last turn, right? Would the guy go back on the capital? And we were saying the things to be worried about are like water elementals are a big thing. And I think that was the biggest one. I don't think there was another thing that was like similar.
He can get turn timered by skeletons. That was the other thing.
That was the other thing. Oh, and we were saying fire elementals would help with that. And sure enough, there's fire elemental casters here. So he's got this guy to buff quickness on the god or something.
Yeah, quickness makes sense. I'm pretty sure that's what it's for. And then with the life drain on the god, that also gives the god more survivability.
Yeah.
Because the life drain also restores the fatigue. So oftentimes quickness can like be a survivability malice, just in that, it makes you fatigue out faster and then get crit more and so on. But when you've got life drain, it does the opposite. You actually restore your fatigue faster.
Yep. This guy's probably a water elemental caster. There's a few nature gems on these other guys. So I'm guessing we're going to see Swarm, some baby fire elementals. This is a big water elemental.
I would also guess Foul Vapors, not because it's a particular counter, but just because he's been casting Foul Vapors every battle.
He puts
there
it
is.
Now, and this... Oh, no, he did get Serpent's Blessing on these guys. Or the Pythium version.
Gift of the Sacred Swamp, yeah.
Gift of the Sacred Swamp. So these fire elementals have been made. He's got 2 of them. 1 more maybe in production. Let's see if he gets interrupted.
But I think it's going to be tricky, though, is those water elementals have a ton of FR. Because those are the size 6 guys, so they've got big fire resistance.
Right.
One of those interesting things in that the matchup between fire and water elementals gets much better for the water elementals at the larger size because they have more fire resistance in the bigger forms.
Yeah, that's a great point. I don't think I realized that. So the god has done summon Earth Power, Iron Skin, Liquid Body, Personal Regen. I don't think we see Moss Body yet, and that's the other final thing for the. Hopefully he gets to layer on here, but he's distracted by bugs, so it's possible that doesn't get cast.
There it is.
Okay, there's Moss
He's
Body.
moss-bodied now.
And then these guys blow up, but they've done their job and they're immortal. He really needs to kill this water elemental. This water elemental is like the threat. There's one more water elemental that's back here busy pounding the crap out of this fire elemental.
And there's also fire elementals on Pythium side.
Right.
Yeah, but unfortunately that god's not offensively particularly scary.
Right.
Ooh, and it's holy worded.
Tangle Vines. Tangle Vines not as much of a problem here. This water elemental's been reduced, but this one hasn't. And I don't know whether one is enough.
Oh, he's got Banefire. No, that was
Slime, Fascination, Tangle Vines, Holy Word. The water elemental's doing a lot of damage, but this guy has a lot of regen too.
Yeah, I mean, we know looking at the turn that Pythium held the field. So the question is just if this god was able to retreat or if it actually like dies. I think it's gonna. Oh yeah, he's actually taking damage.
Yeah, I wonder, did Moss Body get popped? Yeah, Moss Body got popped.
Yeah, with that out of the way, he's gonna be like.
Yeah,
he's slowly bleeding hits.
So he's got cold resistance, but not enough. He's only got 5. So yeah, the frozen hearts here are vicious.
Yeah, any sort of armor negating damage is for sure going to add up. But yeah, it was mostly that water elemental from the looks of things.
Yeah.
It's kind of impressive how much hurt just one of those guys can put out.
Yeah, they're really, really scary. I mean, the big size is, I think, 4 armor piercing attacks? Like, it's a ridiculous amount.
Yeah, it's 4 20 damage armor piercing attacks.
Yeah. And these guys don't fuck around. If you can't protection tank these guys easily. Little last minute caveat there. So
he didn't get ethereal down, right? Yeah, he didn't have a mage to put ethereal up.
And that would have actually probably swung it. The only question is whether there would have been enough for, like, if he had a ring of cold resistance and he cast ethereal on him, or he could have even done resist cold in lieu of something else potentially.
Or the omni resist nature spell, actually.
Right. That plus a body ethereal caster, which Agartha does have access to astral mages. The thing is if you're playing a scales Agartha, which we are seeing here, you don't tend to make this mage very much. But this guy,
we've kind of talked about him.
Right.
Those guys are just super inefficient compared to your other mages, which like reliably do more useful stuff. But yes, that is your astral access, so you do need them.
Right. If you take a heavy bless, you may consider making them more because, like, if you're worried about foul vapors, not that that's something Agartha needs to be worried about. You can't protect your mage core with it, So, and really, you just need one. The other thing is, a lot of times you want to make some of these guys the Chthonian necromancers, which are your big cap onlys, and they'll sometimes get it as well. So, but apparently he didn't have one, and if you don't have one, you can't use them. So
that's God down.
And we probably won't be seeing that god come back. I mean, it's going to be, he doesn't have enough mages left. And the mages he has are mostly, they're not sacred.
Non-sacred.
Yeah. So, it's going to be a long time until we see that god back, if we ever do.
Yeah, I'm in the never camp as well.
Yeah. But his flame burnt brightly while he was alive.
Yeah, and I also want to add that Agartha's army in the Southern Fort is completely immune to foul vapors because he only has mages that had those rings, the serpent rings on them, and the poison immune umbrals.
Right. This is a good example of selection bias because I have a feeling in the coming turns we're going to be able to say, well, as you can see from this battle, Agartha is completely immune to foul vapors.
Yes, because he lost enough mages that he finally has enough serpent rings for everyone.
That's right. Okay. Continuing the Pythium thread, we see Tianchi massing forces.
And we see a brilliant move from Arco.
Oh, yes.
The masterful move.
So Arco just decides to attack Tianchi. He is a free agent at this point. Joman has died.
Pythium.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah. Wait, who?
He's taking a Pythian province,
right.
not a TNG province.
Oh, okay, thanks. Sorry, I didn't know exactly how I misspoke there. But yeah, he's taking a Pythian province, and he's a free agent. So Pythium is probably less excited to fight Arco. Like,
on top of everyone else, yeah.
Right. So he probably doesn't want to forgive this. He's not really in a position to do much about it.
The other thing that I think is funny is that this is not like a full mobilization. He's still gathering his guys up in Ulm and on his southern border. Like, he just took the Joman stuff.
Right.
He's like, not set up for a full-on invasion of Pythium. He's just grabbing this, which is great. I love that.
The looter grind set. And then here we got some mercs in the front as Arco tries to storm the last of the Jomanese provinces, which is the Cap.
And we know how that's going to go because we already saw the report there.
Right.
But yeah, he's doing the right thing where you've got the sacrificial units in the front.
That are going to trample dudes on the way back, though. Oh, wait, are they? Yeah, they are. They just can't trample the Cerulean warriors.
Right. But, I mean, he's happy to get rid of them. They're just mercenaries. He doesn't care. Yeah, and with the Foul Vapors, he's very comfortably going to win this one.
And all the Joman fans, sorry for your loss today. On this day, the great nation of Joman falls. So everyone pour their drink out.
Also, while it looks like Arco took some major losses there, the vast majority of that is mercenaries. His only actual losses were the 2 Mystics, the 1 Pangia, and like 5 real units.
Yeah. So, ideally you don't lose the mages, but that's fine for taking a capital.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And now, in my opinion, he needs to wait for just a little bit. Like, sit down, research, and then don't go on Xibalba until they go on Vhim.
Definitely not before they go on Vhim. But even if they go on Vhim, I think you want to fight Xibalba with, like, I'm not exact. I'd have to think about it, what tech you would want. But
I think you want some level 8s. Like, you want level 7s and 8s.
Yeah, he's a long way from that, though. Like, the research for Arco is pretty bad. It's the worst of all the nations except for Pythium, I think.
But he's better than Xibalba, actually.
Oh, and Xibalba. Okay, that's a good point. Yeah. But
Xibalba is very behind in research.
He's got a long way to go to catch up. Now, just this turn, we'll at least see some more mages hitting the books. So we'll see a little jump up this turn. He also, well, probably a big jump, because actually there's some mages here that are also going to hit the books.
And, whatever he's been recruiting, given that he's kind of been shuffling guys around, like, towards his borders. So as those guys arrive in their new deployment zones in, like, Ulm and wherever else, they're also going to be researching.
Yeah.
He's also starting to catch up in site searching, which I also like.
Yeah, and he's taken this here with... This looks interesting, actually. There's a Ryujin here. So I'm guessing a PD dump and water elemental. Oh, lesser water elemental. Feels bad, man.
Yeah, Joman just didn't have the research to compete. And this is the Thug Squad. So these guys have ethereal on them, so a small water elemental isn't going to pose nearly as much of a threat. Even a big water elemental, actually.
Yeah. That's very cool. So chops these guys up. Arco's just been playing really well tactically. So yeah. And then has this fort under siege from Gath, which is part of an arranged deal.
Well, it was more like an extortion.
Yeah, an extortion. Yeah. He really is, like, we just need to get him on Moonbase. He's really the evil villain of this series.
It's just great. I hope he continues to do well.
Just bullying all his neighbors. Yeah.
And he's not
perfectly favorable Diplo. Not even a problem.
And he's relatively close, I would say, to getting to that frontrunner status. He really just needs to chill for a little while. And then, if I were in his position, I'd also try to put up at least 1 gem gen global, just in order to catch up with the gem leaders, because you don't have that sort of like alternative eco advantage that you can eke out the way that Blood Nations or Erythia can.
Yeah, he had, like you said, he has started to catch up on Gem Gen. So, I mean, he's
Or
in position
site
4.
searching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Arco can site search really well, or pretty well.
Yeah, no, they have every path except for blood and air nationally.
Yeah. So,
And even then, they can actually get both of those through summons, I believe. Yeah, because they can get blood off of the carries, and yeah.
Zabalba has moved their Doomstack forward towards this Vhim fort.
And we know exactly what they want. They want that throne back.
Yep.
It had been theirs for the briefest of moments. They remember that glory.
Yeah, slights are not unremembered. So this has been an itch that Zabalba's probably wanted to scratch for a while. And they're gonna give that the full Axolotl scratch now. It's gonna be.
Yeah, the question is more just, are Vhim going to agree to give it to him, or is like the war going to go on? And is Xibalba going to push deeper into Vhim territory once they've secured it?
Yeah, I do
That's the
wonder
real
that
question
myself.
for me.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of that will depend on what Arco does, but yeah, I'm pretty curious as to how that all plays out. Oh, Tianchi took this from Erythia. I think that Tianchi wanted access to underwater, probably to make Bishop Fish or something. But
yeah, they mentioned Bishop Fish, but the lake province that they had been talking about was the one adjacent to that throne in their west, the one that Pangia has now.
What's strange about this is he can't trace income from it. I guess it doesn't necessarily matter.
It doesn't really matter. Yeah, you can. The Camazots can make a lab, and then he can magic phase in a mage. Although, or not magic phase, he can use a shade mail to get the water mage over, and then shade mail the Bishop Fish out.
Yeah, that's true.
It is a little complicated, but he can at least get those holy threes.
Yeah. Okay. So that is that.
Only
who have we not covered?
Well, you haven't covered Erythia.
Okay, let's take a look.
So we know that Erythia and TNG are preparing to fight Pythium. So we can kind of see those armies on the border. And it looks like we can actually see what he's patrolling with there. But that might just be province defense. Yeah. Oh, he's actually patrolling. Okay.
Some stuff.
Yeah. Not showing off his mages or anything, of course. But
right.
Yeah. Just catching out scouts. We already covered Gath and Marin. Marin having the slightly unusual movement.
I think that's it.
We talked about that Utgard, I guess, but I mean, we don't see Utgard fighting. We just see them moving their big ball.
A peek, yeah. So these guys are sitting here, and it looks like they got pinged by Vhim this turn, or patrolled out.
Yeah, that's patrol out. Given where it is in the order, they caught them with the other scouts.
And this is all of the Utgard mages. It's 27 Sethkona, 7 Norna, oddly a Skrti and a werewolf, so he hasn't.
Yeah, Can we check out the battle and see if those are turbocom setup?
Yeah, let's see.
So my preference is generally to keep them in the werewolf form. Oh, that's a thug.
Oh, wow.
Okay. That is a very heavy thug. So, okay, so he's not running a turbo communion here, which I think is a mistake.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, and then he's also got no round
because
one
with this many mages too, like your Sethkona are really only good in a communion, and when you bring this many, you can only support this many in a turbo communion. Otherwise, you're going to be just losing a ton of Sethkona every fight. So,
yeah, he also doesn't have any round one battlefield defenses. He doesn't actually have any round one defenses, period. He's not doing like luck round one either.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, this is very
go into a communion. Yeah.
This is very scary because this is vulnerable to a bunch of different things, and we know that Vhim is thinking about bone grinding.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
But Vhim also has those ADEP, so he could even do something like Earthquake, and that would still work because these guys just aren't casting defenses fast enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and with a setup like this, you do kind of want a long battle, right? Like, that's kind of the thing. So, wasting a single turn doing luck or body ethereal and stuff is not really a big deal. If the battle's going to turn 60, you won't really miss the first turn of skeletons that much.
Yeah, he's also his positioning is very scary to me. He doesn't have Evo bait.
Yeah.
He's got his guys clustered around his mages. Like that's the highest HP density.
Yeah, that's probably true.
There's a lot about that setup that's very scary to me. I wouldn't feel comfortable moving that army around.
Yeah. Well, so far he doesn't have a non-aggression pact with Vhim, and he hasn't done anything yet. So we'll see what actually happens next turn. Vhim might wait for him to poke him, but Vhim also is not constrained by nap. So Vhim could hit this with like a turn 1 bone grinding if they want to. Okay. I think that's it. We're right at an hour too, so good time to end it. What are your closing thoughts here?
Yeah, kind of want to see where Arco goes next. We know that he is not happy with Xibalba. So, we know that that's like most likely his next target. And, that is what he had explicitly mentioned. But there's just the question of like timing, like how quickly is he going to move? Given how aggressive he's been playing so far, my initial thought is that he's just going to go attack. But I think the more sensible thing to do, as we've mentioned a couple times, is wait, build up, hit some of those timings, and then get yourself set up where you actually can beat an Ocelotl stack before making that last push. Or not last push, that next push, I should say.
I mean, he's positioned to do a ton of vulturing on Pythium, too. That's the other thing we didn't really mention. We can see he's obviously thinking about it from this turn, but he's not really on the clock to do anything. He can just wait to see how this war plays out with Pythium and Agartha, and then vulture a lot of Pythium stuff if he wants to. It doesn't look like his troops are necessarily in position to do that. Like, we don't see... It'll be interesting if he keeps this army here, and maybe he even just goes on top of this Pythium throne. Like, you don't deserve this anymore.
This is mine now.
This is mine now. But yeah, like, this fort probably has enough troops in it and mages to raid the surrounding territory whenever he's ready. So...
Yeah, but that does mean like his armies are not in position to do that. So Pythium actually decides to fight back, he would have a pretty hard time.
Right. He has to kind of time it with has to is a strong word considering his actions, but he may want to consider timing it with the actual, vulture timing rather than being the avant-garde of the war, the war mobilization. But
yeah, I mean, maybe, on the other hand, if he moves fast, he can get more territory. It's just, he's not in position to force a death ball battle on Pythium's capital or whatever.
Right. All right. So I think that's it. We'll see you guys next time. Take care.